have not had any conversation with the Trump administration about any possible extension to the expiration of their emergency powers. That's not an extension that I support. It's my expectation that this week, when we meet as House Democrats, both in caucus and during any whip conversations that we have, we'll explore that issue further. But there's been no effort by the Trump administration to justify any extension of the emergency powers that were probably the result of Donald Trump trying to figure out a way to change the topic, given his deep unpopularity, the failing of this administration to do a thing about lowering the high cost of living, and the fact that the one big ugly bill is incredibly unpopular, and Republicans have been unable to do anything during the August district work period to reverse that reality. I had a very good conversation with the mayor of the District of Columbia. I'm going to continue to support her position. Every single area of criminal activity that you mentioned was on the way down prior to the arrival of the National Guard. I'm going to continue to personally support the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia. I'm going to support the Chicago Police Department, the New York Police Department, and police officers who protect and serve all across the country. And if those local police departments conclude that they want some support from the federal government, then I support that effort by those local police departments to partner with the federal government. It's as simple as that. Donald Trump is not going to get away with lecturing anybody about issues of law and order. His administration is the very definition of lawlessness and disorder. He promised to lower costs on day one. You know what he did on day one? He pardoned hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers when attacking the Capitol on January 6th. That's the Donald Trump record. And no matter how much he wants to distract the American people away from what he himself has done, the reality is his administration is the definition of lawlessness and disorder in every possible way. Those are the facts.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. The RSC Article 1 Task Force is leading efforts to restore Congress's constitutional authority as the legislative branch responsible for passing laws in this country. One of Congress's authorities is the constitutional responsibility for overseeing the governance of the District of Columbia. For years now, the D.C. City Council has not only prioritized left-wing policies and programs, but intentionally sought to hide their activities from Congress. It is a new day in D.C., however, and Congress intends to once again assert its authority to ensure that Washington, D.C. rightfully reflects and represents this great nation on the national and international stage. President Trump's unyielding leadership and strength, coupled with proper congressional oversight, ensures that Washington, D.C. will reclaim its rightful place as the shining symbol of American strength and dignity. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution states that the seat of government doctrine grants Congress plenary legislative authority over the District of Columbia as the federal capital. The Founding Fathers wanted the nation's capital to be free from disproportionate influence of any single state and the influence of states generally. In 1973, Congress granted D.C. limited home rule authority through the District of Columbia Self-Government Reorganization Act, also called the Home Rule Act. In the Home Rule Act, Congress reserves the right at any time to exercise its constitutional authority as legislature for the district, which it includes the right to review and block local legislation before it takes effect. It has now become necessary for Congress to exercise such authority. Why? because the D.C. City Council is seeking to exercise its authority not for the best interests of its citizens or the broader community, but for political purposes. Today, the political city council is using special legislation not for emergencies, but in response to the Trump administration's effort to bring law and order to D.C. and to circumvent Congress's authority. For example, in March, the City Council enacted a temporary law codifying Chevron deference in D.C. in the city courts in an effort to avoid the effects of the United States Supreme Court's decision in Loper-Bright. I filed H.R. 3766 to repeal the special law and prohibit such future laws. Another example, 1 month after President Trump signed his EO making the District of Columbia safe and beautiful, the City Council implemented a temporary law to amend the open meeting requirements to allow it to meet in secret. The city councilmen during the hearing indicated that they wanted to meet in secret in response to congressional and presidential oversight of their failed city policies. In response, Senator Lee and I introduced 2 bills, one to exercise congressional disapproval and block this law, and also one to create an expedited period of congressional review over special legislation. Section 740, the Emergency Control of Police in the D.C. Home Rule Act, grants the President of the United States the ability to mobilize the Metropolitan Police Force when it's determined that special conditions of an emergency nature exist for federal purposes for a period not to exceed 30 days unless further extended by Congress. President Trump has lawfully exercised this law. On August 11th, President Trump issued a memorandum directing the Secretary of Defense to mobilize the D.C. National Guard. While governors control their state guards, the D.C. mayor does not control the D.C. Guard, which is under the control of the president. D.C. has seen major improvements in the incidence of crime in the last 3 weeks with the help of federal intervention. Homicide rates are down by 38%. Robbery is down by 62%. The total violent crime is down 45%, and carjackings are down 78%. Other governors and mayors should look at these improvements and welcome support from the government to keep their citizens safe. It is up to the governor of each state to decide if deployment of their National Guard is needed to help decrease violence and prioritize safety. It is important to note that ICE and other federal law enforcement has jurisdiction over illegal alien crimes everywhere in this country, and those governors and mayors do not have the legal right to declare their jurisdictions to be sanctuaries from federal law. I'm Harriet Hageman. I represent the great state of Wyoming. I am the chairman of the Article 1 Task Force, and I now turn it over to Chairman Pfluger of the RSC.
Well, I want to start by thanking Congresswoman Harriet Hageman, who is the chairwoman of the Article 1 Task Force. And she's doing a great job. And we're surrounded as well by my colleagues who come from a variety of states, but come here to do the right thing. And unfortunately, we're having to turn our attention in Congress on doing what the District of Columbia, its mayor, and their leadership should have done long ago, and that's to keep this city safe. For too long, we have watched liberal activists like those right there parading as politicians to turn our nation's capital into a crime-infested embarrassment. D.C. became one of America's most dangerous cities because of failed soft-on-crime policies that devastated innocent families while coddling the very criminals terrorizing our states. And it made our capital unsafe for residents, for visitors, for members of Congress, and unfortunately even for our interns and our staff. President Trump has rightfully exercised his authority to restore law and order here over the last few weeks. And what a tremendous job our federal law enforcement officers have done for this city. This is what happens when you have leadership that actually cares about public safety. This is what happens when you have a president and a Congress who are focused on restoring law and order to this great country. Thank the good Lord that we have President Trump back in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, Congress must take the next step and use our Article 1 powers. We cannot and will not allow D.C. to fall into a hellscape again. When the local government fails, it's our constitutional duty to act. Congress has a clear constitutional authority over D.C., and we will use it without hesitation to continue making D.C. safe and great again. Criminals should never feel more at home here in this city than the law-abiding residents and visitors and leaders from all over the country, and in fact all over the world, who come to visit this city. The days of letting the left's failed policies destroy great American cities is over. And again, I want to thank my colleagues for their hard work, especially that of Harriet Hageman on the Article 1 Task Force. I now turn it over to my good friend from South Carolina, Mr. William Timmons.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I got back here on Sunday, and I got to tell you, the difference is truly incredible. I've been working for the last 6.5 years to try to keep this city what I know it can be, to work with the mayor, the city council, the chief of police, to help people that need help. Thousands of homeless people in our nation's capital. It has just ripped me apart. It is so sad to see people suffering. We need to help these people. And it's even more sad to see the people victimized by violent crime, whether they're killed, carjacked. I've seen members of Congress that have been mugged. We've had staff that have been killed. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. President Trump has saved our nation's capital. I've said for the last 6.5 years that a nation's capital in decline represents a nation in decline. We are not in decline. There's a new day in this country, and there's a new day for American leadership in the world, and our capital needs to show that. So thousands of homeless people that put up tents all over this city are now getting help that they need. They're getting food, they're getting showers, they're getting mental health counseling, they're getting drug counseling. And guess what? The criminals know for the first time in decades that if they commit a crime, there will be consequences. Walking around yesterday all over the city and seeing our soldiers from all over the country here keeping us safe. And guess what? They haven't had to do much in terms of law enforcement. They haven't had to protect anybody because deterrent threats matter. And having soldiers that are walking around, criminals know that they're going to be caught. They're going to be held accountable. And they know that this president is not going to let them out tomorrow. That's what we need. That's what we have needed for so long. And I couldn't be more excited for the Washington, D.C. that I see today. And Congress has a huge role to play in this. We must pass laws to further appropriate funds, to beautify the city, to make every American proud of this city, to make sure that every American can come here and not be worried about being mugged. For the last 6.5 years, I have told people that this is not a safe place and you should not walk around at night. That makes me so unhappy when I have to do that. Not anymore. Not anymore. I am so excited that President Trump has taken these steps, and Congress must now act. We're going to pass a number of additional laws to make sure that we never find ourselves in this situation again, and we're going to give not only the funding they have asked for, we're going to give them much more than the funding they asked for to make this city exactly what it should be. It should represent the greatest country in the history of human civilization, and people should be safe and very excited to come here. That's what we're going to do. I thank Harriet Hageman for her leadership and August Pfluger for his. It's a new day in this city. It's a new day in our country. It's a new day for leadership in the world. And we're going to do everything we can to help President Trump keep us on the right track. And with that, I turn it over to Representative Brad Knott. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Timmons. My name is Brad Knott. I'm from North Carolina. And before my time in Congress, just a short while ago, I was a federal prosecutor. I investigated violent criminals, I investigated cartels, I investigated human traffickers, wherever they were all over this country. And it became very clear to me when I was working with law enforcement that if you don't fight crime, if you don't attack it, if you don't work hard for long sentences, crime will flourish. And that's exactly what we've seen here in Washington, D.C. for the last couple of years. And from my time as a federal prosecutor, I know some of the federal agents who have been called to serve in Washington as part of the president's initiative. And since their arrival, I have been astounded as I have stayed in touch with them at the amount of contraband, the number of dangerous people, whether it's drugs, whether it's gangs, whether it's illegal firearms, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's South American cartels, you name it, it is right here in Washington, D.C. The soft on crime policies of the Democrats has unfortunately allowed crime to spiral out of control, whether in D.C. or elsewhere around the country. Unfortunately, we are seeing the Democratic Party and the far left portions of this country protect the criminals rather than backing law enforcement. We've seen city after city spiral out of control and decay right in front of our eyes, including Washington, D.C. I applaud the president for saying the simple truth. It does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. And regardless of who you are, when you come to Washington, it's a safe city now. Businesses are thankful. Families are thankful. Citizens, tourists, we are all thankful. It's time to stop turning a blind eye for crime wherever it is. Wherever it is, we must investigate, we must prosecute, and we must protect the law-abiding citizens of this country. Thank you, and with that, I turn it over to Representative Laurel Lee.
Good afternoon. I'm Laurel Lee from Florida's 15th Congressional District, and I want to thank my colleagues on the Republican Study Committee for their leadership on this issue, particularly Representative Hageman and Representative Pfluger. So Washington, D.C., our capital city, is the seat of our democracy and a symbol of freedom around the world. But for too long, it has also been a city that is plagued by violent crime, failed policies, and leadership that refuses to take responsibility for public safety. That is why I am proud to support President Trump and my colleagues who are here today in our efforts to return order and law to Washington, D.C. Together, we will advance common sense proposals to restore order, to put victims first, to hold violent criminals accountable, and to stop the revolving door of repeat offenders who cycle back onto the streets. In just the past 2 weeks since President Trump stepped in, we have already seen the dramatic difference that decisive action takes. Carjackings are down, violent crime is trending down, federal coordination has strengthened detention and prosecution. And for the first time in a long while, the people of D.C. are beginning to feel safer in their own neighborhoods. That progress proves a simple truth. When you enforce the law, when you keep dangerous criminals off the streets, when you prioritize the safety of families, and when you allow law enforcement officers and prosecutors to do their jobs, you get results. The American people deserve a capital city that reflects the very best of this country, not one that turns a blind eye to lawlessness. Republicans are committed to ensuring that D.C. is safe, secure, and accountable for years to come, and we will not stop until that promise is fulfilled. I now turn it over to my colleague, Representative Fedorchak.
Thank you, Laurel. Thank you, Representative Hageman, Pfluger, for your leadership on this really important issue. I'm Julie Fedorchak. I am a representative from North Dakota, the lone member from North Dakota. As my colleagues have said, crime in our nation's capital is out of control. If D.C. were a state, it would have the highest homicide rate in the country, and already this year nearly 1,600 violent crimes have been reported. I agree with the people here. D.C. is a beautiful city. It's an amazing city, and it's the best capital in the world. But it isn't safe. We all know this. In fact, I felt this myself recently in a small way, but I want to share the story. I was walking down the street in July near my apartment in Navy Yard, not very far from home, and I felt something hard hit me in the back of my head. It was in broad daylight. I was very startled. I was on the phone at the time, and just as that happened, a pack of juveniles came rushing by on their bikes, and I turned to look around and see what had happened, and a large, hard plastic object had been thrown directly at my head. Now, that was a minor incident. I wasn't harmed. But the young people who did it with reckless abandon and with zero fear of consequences. They gathered in a circle not far from me after that and sat there and laughed. And it's just an example of how crime is out of control in this city and there aren't any consequences. America is the greatest country in the world, There's no reason why our capital should have a violent crime rate higher than some of the most dangerous places in the world. Just as President Trump restored order at our southern border by enforcing the laws on the books, he is stepping in now to help make D.C. safe again. Many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have falsely claimed that D.C. crime stats are at a 30-year low. But let's remember that crime is not just about statistics. It's about people. It's about the mother who sent her child here to intern in one of our offices this summer, never to see him again. It's about all the families who suffer from crime in this very city. It's about the Metropolitan Police Union, who agrees that they're stretched too thin and don't have the resources to take care of crime in this city and to provide a safe environment. It's about staffers, interns, families, and visitors who live with the daily reality of coming to the city that isn't safe. That's why I support President Trump's actions to restore law and order in Washington, D.C., and why I'll continue to stand with my colleagues in demanding real accountability and real solutions to make this city safe again. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Representative Harriet Hageman for closing remarks.
Buddy, do you want to go?
Oh, sorry, buddy. I didn't see
That's
you over
okay.
there.
That's okay. Thank you very much. I'm Buddy Carter. I have the honor and privilege of representing the 1st Congressional District of Georgia. And we're here today to talk about something that Donald Trump promised during the campaign. He promised to make our nation safer and more prosperous. Now, he's already made it more prosperous through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Now he's making it safer. He's making it safer by making our streets safer. You know, our streets need to be safe, all of us, not just white people, not just black people. Everyone needs safe streets. Democrats, Republicans, we all want that. And President Trump has done that. I've got a piece of legislation. It's called Make Our Streets Safe Again. And what it does is to codify President Trump's executive order about ending chaos and disorder on our streets. It does this in a number of different ways, not the least of which is that it calls for law enforcement. It also calls for accountability, and it calls for making sure that we are giving help to those who need it. You know, during the last quarter of the Biden-Harris administration, there were over 274,000 people living on our streets. That was because of weak and ineffective leadership. Now we want to end that. And what this bill will do through codifying President Trump's executive order is to make sure these people get the help that they need. Make sure that they get the mental health services that they need, the addiction services they need. We're going to do this by making sure that they're held accountable. Now, I've heard the noise. I've heard the noise from the other side about, oh, you're picking on Democratic cities. You know, there was a famous bank robber, Willie Sutton. They asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. Why are we picking Democratic cities? Because that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is. That's why we're picking them. Chicago, the highest homicide rate in the country. Look at Washington, D.C., number 4 in the country. We've got to end this, and we've got to do it for our citizens, American citizens. You all have the right, your taxpayers, all of us have the right to be able to enjoy our streets, to be able to walk down the street without fear. Look what has happened here in Washington, D.C. Earlier this summer, we had 2 interns who were shot and killed at the Israeli embassy. We had an intern here at the Capitol who was shot and killed. We had a member of the administration who was mugged and brutally beaten. That cannot happen on our streets. And I applaud President Trump for what he is doing here and cleaning up our streets. And I want to help him. I want to help him by codifying his executive orders, making it into law to where we will have to follow this. Again, 2 promises made to make our country safer and more prosperous. Promises made, promises kept.
My name's Ron Estes. I'm the congressman from Kansas 4th Congressional District. We've talking here today about we want to have a safe capital for our country. And right now, that's not what we have. There's the murder rate in Washington, D.C., about 27.5 incidences per 100,000 residents, is larger than so many other world capitals around the world. You can list off other countries, Bogota, Lima, Islamabad, Madrid, other places around, even the United States, the murder rate and the violent crime rate in Washington, D.C. is so bad. And that's why President Trump stepped up, because as members of Congress, we have the responsibility to address and protect and oversee what goes on in the District of Columbia. We didn't want a nation's capital to be in a state where that state would be a special state and get special designation because of that. So we wanted to make sure that it was federal responsibility to make sure that things were addressed there. On June 30th June 30th this year, an intern in my office, Eric Tarpinian Chackham, was murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C. It was a senseless crime, and to this day it's not been solved by the Washington, D.C. police. We want to make sure that we have a safe capital. That's why I applaud President Trump and the work that he's doing in terms of making sure that we do have a safe capital. Yesterday, I was able to walk around the Navy Yard with my daughter, and it was great to see the National Guards out there patrolling around. It was a safe environment for people to hang out. It was nice. There was a family there having a birthday party for one of their children. And we want to make sure that we have a capital that Americans are proud of. It should be a clean capital. It should be a safe capital. We want to be able to have American citizens come here and enjoy their capital. We want to have foreign dignitaries come here and be impressed and enjoy the fact that they've come to America and that we have a nation's capital that we're proud of and we want to support. So I applaud the effort that we're working to make sure that we have safer cities, that we have a safer capital, and that we reduce the crime rate that's been so rampant here in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate all the comments made by my colleagues. I think that you can see that we come at this maybe from a little bit different perspective. At the same time, we all recognize that the beauty and safety of our nation's capital is important to all of us.
You decided you're definitely going to send National Guard troops to Chicago?
I didn't say when, but the answer is, look, Chicago's very interesting because I watched Pritzker get up and say about, we don't need help, we're safe. But 2 weeks ago, they had 6 people murdered, and they had 24 people hit by bullets. Last week, as you know, it was 7 people, 24 people hit, and 7 people died. And then over the last 2 days, that was the crown jewel. They had, I guess, 9 or 10 killed, and 50 hit with bullets. And you have this governor get up, who's a terrible governor, probably he and Gavin Newsom would be probably the 2 worst and most naive. They're naive. Either they're naive or they're very untruthful. And he'll say, we don't want any protection. We don't need. So in the last 3 weeks, he's lost almost 20 people killed. There's no place in the world, including you can go to Afghanistan, you can go to places that you would think of. They don't even come close to this. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now. Parts of Los Angeles are terrible. If we didn't put out the fires, and I mean the other fires, the bullet fires, they didn't do a good job with, they should have had the water coming down, like I said. You know, we had to release the water. We had to go in and release the water to L.A. It's so badly run. But if I didn't send the National Guard into Los Angeles, I would be making an announcement today. I'd be talking about Huntsville. And I'd simultaneously be saying, by the way, the Olympics is not coming to Los Angeles. If we didn't do that, and even the sheriff, the top law enforcement person in Los Angeles said, we could not have handled it without them. So that's what he said.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when, we're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks, and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe. Everyone likes you anyway. They probably wouldn't do it. But But it's so dangerous. And there are people in this audience that you've suffered greatly. There are people in this audience that have been mugged and hurt badly, and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe you were very brave in talking about it. You made quite an impression on a lot of people. I appreciate it. But there were other people in this room that have been hurt very badly just walking down the street in D.C. Washington, D.C. is a safe zone right now. It's a safe city. The restaurants are open. They're booming. You can't get a restaurant. New restaurants are announcing that they're going to be open. This took place in 12 days. Now it's 15 days, but 3 days ago it became what's known as a safe zone. It's a safe city. And this city was really bad, really, really bad. We took 1,600 people out, hardcore criminals that will not be coming back anytime soon. And we're very proud of it. You know, to have our nation's capital lose every week. You know, it was like years, many years, where every single week somebody was killed for many, many, many consecutive weeks. This went on for years. And then we had, last week it was announced that nobody was killed last week. And I made that announcement in front of a very distinguished leader of a country. And I'm saying proudly, ladies and gentlemen, nobody was killed in Washington, D.C. this week. He looked at me like, what's that all about? I say, yeah, we have a little bit of a crime problem, and we don't have a crime problem in Washington anymore. And the mayor has been very helpful, and the police commission has been very helpful, and it's been a great team. And I would love to have Governor Pritzker call me. I'd gain respect for him and say, we do have a problem, and we'd love you to send in the troops, because you know what? The people, they have to be protected. I saw today on one of your networks, not a friendly network, except really the opposite, I would say, very unfriendly network. And they interviewed about 12 people on this morning. Most of them were African American, they were black. And they were saying, please, please, please let the president send in. These were people from Chicago. Please, we need help. We need help. We can't walk outside. We're petrified. If the governor of Illinois would call me up, I would love to do it. Now, we're going to do it anyway. We have the right to do it because I have an obligation to protect this country. And that includes Baltimore. I saw where Governor Moore was asking me to take a walk down the street of Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is a very unsafe place. It's rated number 4 in the city, one of the most unsafe places anywhere in the world. But, you know, we took care. This was a beautiful thing that happened in Washington because we showed that it could be done. And this wasn't just sending big, strong guys, and they are big and they are strong. You know, we had a great decision from the Supreme Court that had to do with sort of talent. It had to do with you are put down based on merit. You can hire based on merit. So merit for a soldier or for a policeman is strong, physically fit, having a certain ability, not a person that is woke and got the job through woke, but wasn't strong enough to lift a gun out of the holster, et cetera, et cetera. No, I looked at the police. As you know, last week I went over, we had a meeting with, there had to be 300 people, and they were all very impressive looking. And when the bad guys see them, they're not going to do a thing. And so I'm very proud of Washington. It serves as a template, and we're going to do it elsewhere. But Chicago is certainly going to be high. I would love to have him call. I would love the governor of Illinois. I'd be honored to take his call. All he has to do is say, sir, we need help. It's out of control. And everyone knows it is. He's not kidding anyone. I would love to have, I would say, Governor Moore call, because I watched him over the weekend trying to explain that Baltimore, what they need is housing. No, they don't need housing. They need to get rid of the criminals. These are hardcore criminals. You know, we took many people off the streets of Washington, D.C. They're hardcore. They're not going to be good. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 2 years, they're going to be criminals. They were born to be criminals, frankly. They were born to be criminals, and they're tough and mean, and they'll cut your throat, and they won't even think about it the next day. They won't even remember that they did it. And we're not going to have those people. Washington, D.C. is now a safe zone. It's a safe place. And you can walk, Katie, you can walk right down the street with, by the way, one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen, which is her husband. He was a football player for like 11 years in the NFL. He's a big person. But big doesn't mean anything when they have guns and when they have knives and everything else that they have, right? But you can walk right down the street, even by yourself, and you're totally safe. Washington, D.C. is a great thing. Yes, ma'am, please.
Mr. President, as you're calling on Democratic leaders across the country to work with you on crime, do you see your efforts here in D.C., including, for example, working with Mayor Bowser here as a model for bringing more bipartisanship in matters not only with crime, but also issues that matter to everyday American people's lives?
So Mayor Bowser's been great. She could have taken the thing, oh, well, and then after I clean it up, they'll take credit for it. You know what they do is they take credit. Like, we cleaned up Los Angeles. We did a great job there. And it was overwhelming what was going on. And again, the police chief made a statement that we could not have done, there's no way they could handle it. You saw what was happening out there. It was going to be a disaster. We stopped it cold. If we didn't do that, would have been a very sad day. And you know, remember, we have the Olympics, we have the World Cup, we have all these things coming, and we have 250, all of these things coming. But I watched Newsom get up and say he's doing a great, he's not, we're the ones that did it, and that's okay, whatever it takes, but the main thing is but he got up and said, we did it. Well, he didn't want us there, and he's going to need us again because it's starting to form again. I see it. It's starting to form again. You know, we have to maintain. It's like maintenance on an airplane. You can buy it, but you have to maintain it. And if you don't maintain it, a good plane becomes very unsafe very quickly. So it's an honor to do it. A lot of presidents wouldn't do what I'm doing. I don't need this heat, but when I watched television last night and I'm watching the news and I see that 9 people were killed in Chicago and 54 were badly wounded with bullets, I say, that's not this country. We have to do something. And I do say this, I say this very much. I'm not speaking to anybody but them right now. I would love to receive calls from governors and mayors saying they need help. We'll help them. We have a lot of people. We have a great force. We have a great military force. You know, Pete will tell you that when I was running for office, and this was a big headline, I think, you know, probably got me a couple of votes, but you couldn't sign people in the military. Nobody wanted to join the military, the Army, Air Force, the Navy, Marine, Space Force, Coast Guard. We never forget Coast Guard because they've done such a great job. Never. But nobody wanted to join any of them. We were way below what we wanted. Every single one. The closest was the Marines, whatever that is. You'll explain that to me. But the closest was the Marines. But every service was way down, way down. And then I got elected, and our country's the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. Everybody's talking about the USA. They're talking about the job that we're doing. Everybody. We have the best economy. We have a very, very important decision being made by the Supreme Court because our country is the richest, the strongest, the most powerful. But if for some reason some liberal court, I'm talking about the court that just ruled, where even an Obama judge voted in favor of us, which I gave him a compliment yesterday, as you know. I said that took great courage. But it's a liberal court, and it's going up to the Supreme Court, who I think have been incredible people. I think they've made very wise decisions. But the tariff question, because without the tariffs, this country is in serious, serious trouble. We've taken in almost $17 trillion of investment is coming in. Most of it is coming because of tariffs. And if for some reason somebody wanted to be politically correct, I actually think it's unpolitically correct. I think politically correct is to approve it because there's nothing so popular as what's happened to our country. Our country is doing so well. But we had a liberal court gave us a very shocking ruling, and that ruling is basically saying that the trillions of dollars that are pouring into our country, putting us in a position like no country is anywhere in the world, that they'd like to see us that taken away. By the way, a lot of the people behind that lawsuit, that particular, are from foreign countries, I might add.
I'm aware that the President of the United States likes to go on television and beg me to call and ask him for troops. I find this extraordinarily strange, as Chicago does not want troops on our streets. I also have experience asking the President for assistance, just to have the rug pulled out from underneath me when execution meets reality. I refuse to play a reality game show with Donald Trump again.